Okay folks, MBS. I'm going to be doing the rotor change now with a new set of pads, and we'll show you how to do that. Right, first up we're going to remove this caliper. Easy to take the pads out, just push that clip in there, pull it out of that pin. Alright, get yourself a little punch. Punch these pins out. Okay, now we need to compress the pistons in so that we can actually make way for the new pads to go in later on. Now, let's see if the other pad piston comes out when I push this in. Oh, they actually didn't. It went back to the master cylinder. Very good. Normally the pad... Oh no, they did come out. Yep, I had to push these back in. Alright, and that's what happens when you have multi-piston caliper. You compress one side, the other side comes out, unless you relieve the pressure on the bleed nipple. So we can take these pads out now and toss them. And now we'll undo the brake line. Must use a flare spanner, guys. This is a 10mm. Now I forgot. I'm going to clamp off the brake line. Mainly because it's got brand new brake fluid in it from the rear brake job. So we don't want to waste it by loosening this line and losing it all. So I'll only lose a minimal amount now. Okay. Generally, these things are pretty hard to do by fingers. You usually have to do it all the way by spanner, most of the times. And now we can get it, and until it's loose. There we go. Do not pull this away from the caliper. Keep it in its basic shape. Don't go any further than that. All right, now we need to take the two bolts holding the caliper, and there's one here and one here. So this one here, a little bit more awkward because it's under the brake line. And I tell you what, they were not tight for a caliper bolt. They're supposed to be around about 90 foot-pound. So yeah, they were definitely under-torqued. Woo! And off she comes. And we'll set that aside. Now I'm going to use a little miniature rattle gun. And your little mechanism comes out. Yeah, that's your freewheeling hub assembly. Put him aside. Now we've got to take that big nut off in the guts here. Okay. Now look guys, if you haven't got a rattle gun and you're trying to undo these, easy way is just to get a long lever like so, jam it up in there, it hits the ground and that can no longer move. There's a stack of washers. Now the next bit are the cones that are in here. We'll show you that cone in a minute. It's a taper, like a wheel nut, and it's tapered in there. Pretty hard to get off sometimes, but there is a trick. You'll need a brass punch. So we get the punch, That one's off. There we go. She's vibrated off. You can see that little cone. I might get myself a bigger slogger, I think. Alright, I'm going to have to clean up the end of my punch. And I do believe I've got it. Alright. Yeah, I've damaged him a little bit, missed it. You just continue along and we'll do the rest of them and then we'll take that off. Okay, down to the last one. Yeah, I think I got him. Yeah, there we go, the hub is coming off nicely. Nothing much to show in there. That's where the contact is made with the drive shaft. And when you've got your freewheeling hub locked in, it locks this component to the shaft and you end up getting drive. So your whole drive is taken by this little fellow here. Alright, next little job is to knock these little tags down that are holding that nut on. Well, it's not holding it on, it's stopping it from unlocking. You do not want these nut coming off. Okay, once they're clear, we can put our big socket on. Now this is a 2 1/8 of an inch. Big mother. So if you haven't got a 2 1/8 inch socket, there is an alternate method you could use. I don't like using it unless I have to, but you get yourself a blunt chisel, okay? Purposely make it blunt so it's not cutting metal away, and you can actually put that punch in, put it right on the edge of the nut and give it a bit of a thump, okay? And you'll find that you'll be able to undo that. And then you might have to do a minor repair to that nut before you put it back on. Now, if you haven't got the tool to put it back on, you basically use the same sort of method, but you've got no feel for it with when you use a punch. So it'll be a little bit more difficult to preload the bearing properly. Now I'll pull that spacer out. There we go. You lock it down as well. You can see that's tang there is bent that way, so it's locked around that first nut. Your first nut is the actual adjuster. This is where you'll make your adjustment when we put it back together. Now, that should pop out. There you go. Baba! One disc off. Alright, we'll just take this bearing out and put him there. We'll take the other one out a little later once we get this disc off. Okay, inside 6 14mm bolts. Now, if you haven't got a rattle gun, guys, just put this in a vise and clamp it up against these two studs here to stop it from turning, and then you'll be able to use a breaker bar and a 14mm socket to get that off. But we are going to, oh yeah, just manages to do, I've only gone on 2. How about we increase it? That's a bit better. Now I'm using a single hex socket. That's I don't like the 12 points or stuff like this. Because can you imagine how you're going to try and get one of these out if you round it off of a 12 point? Oh, going to be fun and games. Now the disc isn't going to fall off, guys. Hey? That is not coming off the hub. What we're going to have to do is force it off. And the best way to do that is you get a chisel, make sure it's blunt, and you're going to jam it in between the wheel stud, the back of the wheel stud, and the disc, and we're just going to keep turning it round until it separates. They are tight. Well, it is on this one anyway. And I suspect it's because it's so rusty. The shaft that this is coming from on the hub is probably covered in rust. Okay, I'm not sure if we'll be able to lever that off now. But you definitely do not want to be touching this area here where the bolt holes are, because that is its mating surface and you don't want to damage that. So we're going to have an attempt now, try and lever this off with a couple of levers. And if that proves to be unsuccessful, then we will now line it up with your wheel studs. Gotcha! Righto, well there you go, you can see all the rust that it had to work its way through. I'll try and buff some of that up before I put the new disc on. Okay, well you can see there, hopefully in the light, see the little tiny bit of damage I've done with that chisel. I'm going to have to clean those up. Yeah, because this surface here needs to be dead flat so the disc can run properly. Alright, so we need to do a bit of cleaning, alright, before we could even think about putting a new disc back on this. So we're going to clean these file marks off, just get a file and clean them flat. We'll get a wire brush in there, clean all this off. And I'm going to repack that hub, but I'm not going to make this video too long and put you through the boring thing of repacking. If you've never repacked before and you want to know how, then I'll have this video as a separate video on my Hilux page, so you can have a look at that if you want to see this thing being repacked. Right, we've done a pre-clean of this hub, got the bearings out, cleaned it all up. We have filed it in all the important places. Now, this surface needs to be perfectly clean, Get this over the top, line it up over the bolts. Check your gap that you're actually going to get a bolt in, which we will. We might get a couple of in the thread just to make sure we've got it lined up. They should go in finger tight into the threads. That's telling me I've got it correctly lined up. Now what I'll do for the other four, we'll get some Loctite on it, 1 drop, okay? 1 drop on the thread, that's all you need. Get it in the hole. You know, guys just put way too much of this stuff on. 1 drop is all you need. Call up Loctite and ask them. They'll tell you. Now when you're pulling these down, pull it down square as you can. I'm going to use the lightest setting I can on my rattle gun and take them down just a little at a time. Make sure it's square. I do believe it has made full contact. Yes, it has. Okay, there is a torque specification for these. I'll see if I can find it for you. Rightio, I've got it sitting in the vise here between the hub nuts there, and we're going to do these up to 47 foot-pound. Hopefully I haven't over-torqued them with that little rattle gun. No, I haven't. That did do up a little bit. It's pretty close, only went up a little bit. Okay, that's the disc put on. Righto, all that's left to do now is to repack the wheel bearings, put a new seal on the hub, and we're ready to fit that disc assembly back on, put the caliper back on, and be finished with the job. But I'm going to make this as a separate video. Some people already know how to pack bearings, some people don't, so it's pretty general. I've already done one in the Coaster bus, a video on that. So if you wanted to repack your bearing, you could just look at that video too. But anyway, next thing you'll see is me ready to put the hub on. Righto, time to put our rotor and hub back together. Now, we've put plenty of grease around the seal shaft. We know we've got our seal in the hub all done, and all we have to do now is just slip it on. Carefully over there, wriggle him on till the bearing goes on. Now we've got to get the seal to push up over onto the axle, and I think we've got it there. Right. And in she goes. Next component is the washer, and if you have a close look at this, you can see that bearing has been spinning on that washer. Not good. So obviously wasn't done up properly, was it? Now let's get the first nut on. Right guys, this is a bit of an insert. I don't feel I explained how to do the wheel bearings up properly when I was doing the other side. So we've come over to this side, we're going to show you exactly what I did. So we'll just undo that a little bit. Okay, when you're using new bearings, old bearings, doesn't matter, you want to seat the bearing into the cup. Alright, so what we do initially is you just take up zero clearance, and we'll do it up 45 degrees, and we'll back it right off and then come back again until there's no pressure and there's just zero clearance again. At this setting there should be no wobble in that disc. You won't be able to tell with the wheel off. With the wheel on, yeah, you've got a larger area here to test that. So you just want to take that play out. Now in the manual it says the final torque is 18 foot-pound, which is sweet FA, it really is. It's not much torque at all. So how do we simulate that torque if we're not got a tension wrench? Well, when you take this back to zero, when you've taken the play out, I would go 5 more minutes on the clock, and that's it. No more than that. If you go more than that, you're going to have too tight a bearing, and it's not going, well, it'll still turn, but you're going to overheat it if you've done that up too tight. Alright, so I hope that explains it a bit better. Then you just put your lock tag in, lock this one on. This gets done up a little bit tighter, of course. You would go up to probably around about a 45-degree angle once this touches that washer. Then you could probably turn that another 45 degrees, and that would get you around about 30 foot-pound torque. So yeah, the whole point is to just get enough load on those bearings to take out any free play that it might have in the wobble of the wheel without doing it up too tight and without having it too loose. Loose bearings will get destroyed, tight bearings will overheat and cook, and they'll get destroyed as well. So you need to get this adjustment pretty right, and I don't think you'll go wrong there with the 5-minute turn once you get the lash out of it. If you have to put your wheel back on, and because you can still do this with the wheel on, you'll get a feel for it. So you could experiment, take that nut back out until you can feel the wheel jiggle, and then keep screwing that nut in until the jiggle is gone, and you'll feel it. It becomes a feel thing. From there, when you've got zero movement in your wheel, then you go that 5 minutes more on the nut, and that should be pretty close to your 18 foot-pound. You know, if you're on 15 or 20 foot-pound, no, yeah, no big deal. Even up to 22, 23 foot-pound, that's fine. You are in the ballpark, and you've taken the free play out, and you haven't overdone the bearing. So from here, oh, look at this, this lines up perfectly. We don't have to back off or do this up, because these tags are lined up beautifully to the nut underneath. So we're going to bend one, maybe two, if we can get two over, to lock it into that first nut. Then we're going to get this second nut and get it on, and then lock the two together so they don't come undone. Now make sure you get these started square, eh? There's not much to the thread, but we just want to nip that up so it doesn't turn. We're going to bend one of these lock tags and have a look at a second to get it locked onto that other nut, and I believe that's the one we're going to do. One right there. Make sure it's sitting dead flat up against it. Now we want to lock this up a little bit so that they don't come undone. Yeah, you want to make sure while you're doing this that the bottom nut doesn't tighten, because that'll make your wheel bearing too tight. And it did not move, so this is a good thing. Now, have we got them lined? Yes, we've got one lined up here with the bottom, and we'll bend it up like so and just tap it flat. Have we got another one? Well, look, not really, but I prefer to have two, so I might just move that one up like so. It's not quite matched up, but this will work. Okay, that's that part done. Now, with calipers or any wheel cylinders, that sort of thing, you want to get this thread started on that and make sure you've got it engaged with the threads. So we're not going to put any bolts through at the moment. All we want to do is get this thread started. Get him going first. And jiggle the caliper around until we get it to start. When you get resistance to it, keep turning. If you can't, then you've got it cross-threaded. Now I've got that 4 turns in, so that's engaged. Now we can get, now don't let go of it, because yeah, the caliper will fall down and bend your brake line. Get your bolt in. Now these bolts are done up to 90 foot-pound, so quite tight. We'll get that on there, and up we come. Calibrated tension wrench. Yeah, I definitely have to watch out for that one. I'm going to get in the camera's way, I'm sorry, but no choice. And we've got that one on. Time for some pads. We've got inside wear indicator, outside wear indicator. This one goes inside, yeah, into that position. and this one will go on the other side. So we'll get them in, and that one is a little tight. Did you see the brake fluid just spurt out then a little bit? That's because as I'm jiggling this in, it's pushing on the piston and fluid is coming out. So I need to tighten that back up with my flare spanner before we attempt to retract the pistons. That should be really easy, guys. If you've got that thread started properly, there'll be no resistance on this nut. So you know you've got the thread going. If it's tight to start off with, look, don't keep going, because pretty sure you've got a thread crossed there. Okay, that's our brake line on. We can now release our brake clamp. Okay, and allow the fluid to come down. Now that we've got one pad in at least, we'll retract the other caliper a little bit, hopefully. Yep, that one is retracting, so they've come out just a little bit. Okay, not much. Okay, hopefully the pad should fit in now. Snug fit. Okay, now our pins. That's right, I had one pin that hasn't had the hole drilled through it, so I'm going to put this pin in through the bottom. Now here's your anti-rattle spring. I'm not going to fit this one, I'm going to fit another one. But once this pin starts going in, you have to have this in place so that the pin goes through there like so, and then you hook them in to the pad like so. Okay, so this all gets tucked in there like that, and the pin goes through there. All right, and these little fellas, they sit on top of the pad. Okay, so that's how that one's fitted. We'll get my bottom pin in, and then I'm going to go and drill a hole in that pin. Now make sure you get the hole in there lined up with that clip that's going to stop the pins from coming out. This little clip here, see the angle they're on? So you basically want to make sure that they're at that angle. You might be able to rotate the pin if it's a loose fit. If it's a tight fit, you might have a bit of a hard time lining that up. But we'll see what happens, eh? And in our case, that pin is loose because it's brand new, I guess. So it makes it easy to get that in there like so. All right, I'm going to go and fix this other pin up so that I can finish this job off. Rightio, we've fixed the hole up in there. Turn that pin around like so, and there we go. Now we'll get that in there, that in there. Well, I had that there a minute ago. Come on, turn it around. In there, and push that back underneath like so. Get our little clip here, place it in there like so, and we're on. Now that I've got the caliper on and the pads in, I'm going to go inside and pump the pedal up until the pads meet and I've got some sort of brake pedal, and then I'll check my master cylinder and top it up if it's required. Okay, pads are up against the disc and I've got a good pedal inside, and we only have to put in about a ½ inch of brake fluid in the master cylinder. Righto, last little bit to the puzzle. We've got all this cleaned up. You get this universal gasket and we put it on over the studs. Put it in nice and even. It can be tight in a few spots. Doesn't seem like it's quite right. Look, so you can see how it's buckling. Okay. I don't know where this gasket's made, but yeah, you can see that it's not quite right. It's buckling up all over the place, but that's all we've got. All right, we've cleaned up the hub. Clean there, clean there. All right, you'll notice there are 2 pins in there that we have to line them up with. It's important that you get rid of all the silicone. If there was any silicone in this job, in the cone area, that you get rid of them. And also on the cones themselves, get yourself a feeler gauge and make sure that that split is clear, so that these two can butt together and put the pressure against the nut that they have to do. That's their job, the cones. Now, we'll just line these pins up, line that up, get it onto the gear, and on it goes. Then we fit our cones. Okay, now we've got them loosely on. We will now use a socket to do the rest of them up. Now, like I did before, we can use this breaker bar in here, turn that hub around like that, that'll stop the hub from spinning, and we can do these up. Now, they will tighten up a little bit because of the cone. The cone will collapse. Remember that split in the cone? That will close up and apply pressure against the washer and the nut. And it should not come undone. Okay. Next is our freewheeling hub. So we might grab a little bit of grease, just apply it to the sliding area where the freewheeling hub connects to, and that's what joins everything together. Now that we've got this hub on, we've just got to put this bolt back on here. On the other side, this is actually missing. Okay, so we're going to get obviously the shaft is going to turn on us, unless we put it in gear or something like that. So I'm going to give this a quick rattle, and that's all I need. Now for the freewheel hub, in this position is its lock position. This is extended out. You don't want to fit it like that, so it's got a spiral screw there. Screw that in until it's all the way in like so. That's the freewheel position. This is not engaged with the gears. The gears engage on that internal bit here. So now we'll feed our gasket on. Oops, my Baroli is shifting. Okay, it doesn't want to go in that way. Let's try in a different locality. There we go. So just, if you can't get that in first go, guys, just pull it out, rotate it to the next set, put it back in, see if it goes in. Now when we're done, we're just going to check that it's actually locking. Now I'm not using the rattle gun for this, yeah. These bolts are too small to be using rattle guns. Now, how tight do you do this? About that. Okay, do not use the full length of the spanner to do this up. Okay. All right. Let's see if the hub works. So we're freewheeling, of course. Drive shaft isn't turning. So now we will unlock it, and you just hear that click. Now my drive shaft is turning. Yeah? So now we'll unclick it. And did you just hear that click? That is now disconnected. Okay? So that hub is working fine. And we are ready to put the wheel on and go for a spin and bed these brakes in. Well, there you go, folks. That's your disc rotor replacement and how you go about it. Last thing to do, as I said, I've got to go for a test drive now and bed these pads and disc in. And I've got the instruction sheet that came with the disc pads to tell me exactly how to do that. If you don't get one of these in your brake pad kit, you can go to my website. Just go to the miscellaneous topics and click on the Hilux button there for all the repairs I'm doing on this Hilux, and you'll see a PDF of this instruction sheet, and you'll be able to safely get your brake pads bedded in without overheating them or destroying them in that first 100 kilometers. All right, and that's pretty important, guys. If you don't follow that exactly, well, look, the results are varied. Every car is different. So yeah, I would follow that to the letter and yeah, go from there. All right, job's done, and we'll catch you in another video.